Davis Live. This is a special edition today. That as I noted earlier on Facebook, that I was compelled to do this show. On yesterday, I was watching the news, and obviously in the last few days, I've been hearing about the death of this young man over. I think it was in Brunswick, Georgia. I think in Brunswick, certainly
Yep.
in Georgia, and it was very bothersome to me, and I have some thoughts about it, and I have some friends of mine who are in the business of the guns and training and things like that. And I thought, you know what? I just feel like it's something I want to talk about. Being an African American man, in this society, and my feelings and my emotions. And I know my emotions are running pretty high right now. But I have an issue with the guns, right? And we communicated a little bit last night about the guns, and Mr. Richard was like, not necessarily. So I thought, you know what? Why don't we come on and have a conversation? Because this is a person who I like, this is a person who I respect. Let's just get that out there right now. We've been knowing each other for quite a few years, but he does what he does. He's very good at it and all. So I thought, you know what? Let's just come on and take a few minutes to talk about some of these things. I think he has a pretty good head on his shoulder. And also, let's just talk about it. And you might notice that he is a white American, right? And I am African American. I know, right. That's amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me also say thanks to Blackout Fight Gear, blackoutfights.com, for all they do for us in Eastern Offset Printing. Again, we will be back for a second show shortly after 1 o'clock, and we'll be talking a little bit about Mike Tyson and the possible comeback. But right now, let me introduce to you our guest, Mr. Isaac Richard. He's out of Indian Land, South Carolina. Again, he's a weapons expert, knows a lot about that. And I know a lot of you might be saying, well, what does weapons have to do with this? Well, it's just I'm going to give my theory on this, right? And of course, we know that there's hate and there's, racism and all these other things, and maybe we'll get a little bit into that as well. But Mr. Isaac, you are one, Mr. Rich. I'm just going to say Isaac. That's
You just call me Isaac. Yeah, we're friends. We're friends, Johnny.
Yeah, we are. And I want you to explain to us, because you, to be honest with you, I really did not look at the video that much because it just upsets me, right? It just upsets me. But you're someone who you do this all the time. You look at videos, situational type things, and you have a perspective on it. And I'm open to hearing everything you got to say, good, bad, or ugly. Now you know me, Johnny Davis Live. We'll talk real solutions. I might give you a little bit back, but I'm certainly open. I'm certainly open to listening to your take on what happened over there. So the floor is yours, sir.
No, thanks, Johnny. I think the first, so I do. I watch a lot of these types of videos, not because I'm weird and I like that stuff, but because I'm a CWP trainer, right? And even though this didn't
explain what CWP is.
A concealed weapons permit. That's what it's classified in one state. Other states they say a little bit differently. Basically, the ability to carry a concealed weapon, right? And now this didn't involve that. We're not talking about that, but. But part of that training, we also talk about scenarios and when you're allowed to use self-defense and when the legal doctrine of self-defense comes into play, right?
And that's what I want to talk about. Yes.
Right. So I do watch a lot of these types of videos just to continue to educate myself and also our students. So like yourself, when I watched it, they're always hard to watch because you see somebody lose their life, right? But based on the video alone, it appeared that Mr. Arbury was running on the left side of the road. Obviously, someone was behind him videoing him. How
do you think? How does that make sense? Why would somebody be videotaping a person just running down the street?
Well, I don't know if the person videoing it was affiliated with the father and the son. They all three could have known each other. I don't know. It could have been maybe just a bystander that saw a truck parked kind of sideways up in the road, and an individual standing outside their front door, outside the driver door with a long gun, right? And said, something looks off here, I should video this. So I don't know who it was or what their rationale or motivation for it was, but I tell you what, it's a good thing we did have the video, though, because without the video, I don't know if
that's a whole other conversation right there.
It is.
Right.
It is. So just to get back on what I saw, he's running on the left side of the road. The truck is parked in front of him, kind of catty corner. The driver appears to already be out of the truck, holding a long gun, and then I believe it's his father's in the bed of the truck. Mr. Arbury runs to the opposite side of the road, goes on the shoulder to run around the truck, and that's when the driver goes in front of the car, and a confrontation ensues. And I think the individual in the bed of the truck fired a shot at him, and then during the ensuing struggle between Mr. Arbury and the son, it appears that he gets shot again, and then unfortunately staggers off and collapses and passes away. But so when I see this video, there's so many things going through my head just from a self-defense standpoint. All right. And I think the reason we have such an outrage with this one, because a lot of times it's almost always split. Like some people, half the population sees it one way, the other half sees it this way. But on this one, I think categorically everybody can kind of understand that this appears to be wrong, right? And this is why, is that put yourself in Mr. Arbery's situation. And I ignore all the other stuff. I don't care what he was doing before this video. I do not care.
Okay.
I don't care if he's breaking into every house, allegedly, whatever. I don't care.
That's certainly alleged. Right. I don't. Yeah, that doesn't look like a situation there. But anyway,
right. Nobody, and even the father and the son said that they didn't witness anything. He just matched the description, right? Wow. But put yourself into his shoes. He's out running. All right. Some gentlemen pull up next to you in a truck, and tell you to stop, that they want to talk to you. Now, I don't just teach CWP classes. I teach self-defense and combatives and things like that. And I'll tell you right now, no, I'm not going to stop when two people in a truck roll up on me.
Well, let's break that down. Let's break that down a little bit more. Not just two people in a truck, right? In this particular situation, you have an African-American male that's running, and two European white guys come in a truck with guns.
Right, yeah.
And you can see.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do it, right? So he continues running, at which point I believe, and again, I don't know any of this, it's just what I've read and other things. I'm not privy to the investigation files or anything, but it appears they pull ahead of him, turn the truck somewhat sideways to block his path. The driver gets out of the car, already holding a long gun. If I was in his situation, I would do the exact same thing. You run to the opposite side of the car, right? To put a car between you and the individual. And then when you pass the car, the driver approaches you with a firearm, not what I considered stowed or, safely, or, but it's in their hands, right? And just from a combative situation and a self-defense situation, I think this is a firearm is good at distances. That's what they're for. Right. To reach out and strike a target at range. Right. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, he should have just kept running, or, he should have just laid down. No. In a self-defense situation, if someone that I don't know is ordering me to stop, that I don't know who they are, and I can see they're not law enforcement, and they approach me with a firearm in a threatening manner, I am going to defend myself. Right. So I think Mr. Arbury did the exact right thing of, in his terms, or I can see from his perspective, that's self-defense, Okay. And unfortunately, a struggle ensued. And then when he touched that rifle and they started fighting, they being the father and the son, they say, well, he was attacking them. Well, I'm more inclined to go with the theory that, you can't really just jump in a truck with firearms out in the open and try and block the path of someone that you didn't witness do anything that vaguely fits the description of someone else, To me, that kind of makes you the aggressor. And I think Mr. Arbery probably had the right to self-defense more than they ever did.
Okay, okay. That's an important point, I believe, because people try to, look, I'm a realist, man. I look at the situation for what it is, And as you said, I certainly agree. The fact that two guys stop you on the street and have guns, that you kind of assume the worst at that point. If they're not police officers, you just assume the worst, and you go into self-defense mode. Right, and that's the part that bothers me. I guess what also gets me is, let's talk about the idea, right? And I know we can't resolve it here, of the climate that we're in, and this is where you and I kind of didn't quite see eye to eye. Where I feel that because those men had weapons, that they were emboldened by that. That because they had these guns, and it wasn't like they left it in the truck and then jumped out and then tried to do whatever and then jumped back on the truck to grab the weapon. They jumped out with this gun in their hand. Right? And to me, and this has been my argument, if anybody watched our last show about weapons, which you can check it out on Johnny Davis Live on YouTube or on my Facebook timeline, to get an idea of what we were talking about, all of the different laws and things like that, what you can and can't do. You should definitely check that out. Maybe you understand a little bit more about what I'm saying. But I really feel that somehow these guys were emboldened by the fact that they have these weapons in their hands. And this is going to intimidate him, or or if it gets worse, do what they did, kill him. My theory has been, remember when I talked to you about who should own a weapon and who should not own a weapon, the process of us getting weapons. I know nothing about these guys' background. Well, one was a police officer or something like that, so surely he was trained in it. Whether the son was or not, I don't really know. But let's speak to that a little bit about you disagreeing in the idea that they might have been emboldened with the weapons, because if they were not emboldened, they would have jumped out just open hand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that having a weapon might embolden someone that is willing to commit a crime. I don't disagree with that. I mean, the very nature of whenever you go into a conflict or potential conflict, you always want to have the upper hand, correctly? So I probably agree with you that to some extent the firearms could have emboldened them. I agree with that. What I don't agree with, though, is that necessarily that this happened because of the firearms. I think this happened because of an underlying issue or perception with those individuals. Now, we can't argue, because we don't know, that if they didn't, they might have jumped in the truck and rain them down with the truck, or or not, or whatever. Like, we don't know. You know? But I don't disagree with the fact that when people with ill intent have a firearm, they are emboldened. That's kind of the whole point of a firearm when you're using it for bad purposes, right? That's the whole intent of a firearm. But the contrary is also valid, that if you're using it properly in a defensive manner, it doesn't embolden, but it empowers the weak to defend themselves from those that prey on them. So that's where I look at it, like I said, on a macro level, right? You have people that use them improperly. You have people that use them properly for defensive. So to me, it's kind of a net on both sides of the equation. To me, the real issue is that people feel like they have a right to stop someone and harass them. That's what's messed up.
Isaac, I just want to, a couple of points in there that you made. One was that about the mentality. I want to go into that just a moment. Talk about sane and insane, right? And what I'm talking about is that when you go and you have to do a background check before buying a weapon. Remember, my whole premise on the other show was should people be able to just walk into a store and buy a weapon with ID and an address and a clean background, right? That's the whole premise. So these guys have weapons. But my question is, do you think, and I know you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that
My wife
racism can be psychotic, or that it could be deemed medically insane?
to do what?
What do you think about that? If you hate somebody or hate a group so bad, should you be able to buy a weapon? I mean, how are you going to determine that? I get it, but I want to hear your point.
Right. Well, so that's a loaded question.
Sure.
So there's because there's lots of differences of aspects of mental illness. The vast majority of individuals that suffer with mental illness are not homicidal or suicidal. You know, they got a little depression, low anxiety, you know, what OCD, whatever type of thing. You know, and they're not at that level, right?
Right.
There are some that are adjudicated by the courts through the probate court system to be mentally ill, and those are the ones that are prohibited from owning firearms.
Right.
Okay, so those are the really mentally unstable folks. Okay, we already have a system in place to get them or not allow them to have weapons. What you're really referring to is hate, not mental illness. There's a huge difference. All right, what you're really referring to are individuals that have issues with rage, anger, prejudice, those types of things. And I don't know how you screen for that type of stuff. Right. I mean, think about it. When you go to buy a firearm, okay, you're not mentally unstable by the probate court, all right, but do you hate people? Do you hate black people? You know, I mean, what do you have? How do you do that? You know.
That I know that's and that's the question, because in this situation it seemed like a clear indication that these people had a bias towards a certain group of people, in particular black people, and just had assumed that this was a criminal.
Right. Well, and I'll play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
We don't know that bias exists. What we do know is they stated that he met the description, which is being an African American. We don't know that they have a prejudice against African Americans. We don't know that, right? They say, look, they're, you know, so they were that they and this is the defense they were using, is that, you know, he matched the description, so we acted on it. I think they acted poorly, and I think after the court system gets done with it, they'll see that they acted poorly and stuff. But I'm not necessarily ready to say that we know that these people are, because we don't. They just said he matched the description, they acted on. Now, how do you describe people? One of the main things is race, right? I think.
By the way, that's a problem I've always had, Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say, I used to be in retail.
Mm-hmm.
And hold your thought, please. Hold that thought so you can come back to it, please. But
sure.
I used to be in retail, and every time they had a person in stores like they were stealing, they were not always black. They were different races, but every time it was a black person. They would say a black person before, and I had to have many meetings to say, hey,
right.
Why is the first description that they are black, as opposed to we have a person in the store that's stealing? You know, there's someone in the store that's stealing, but in their description, it was always, hey, the race first, and especially if they were black. So we have a unique problem in this.
Well, I think that's an easy way to describe someone that is visually distinctive instantly, right? So if you have to communicate something, if you have, like, for instance, if me and you were standing next to each other and someone said, describe that one, to where everyone else knew which one you were talking about, the first thing that would be the most efficient would be race, right? So, but I think the bigger issue, though, is honestly just the stereotyping that one race has a predisposition for criminal behavior. That's the issue that I have, because it does. And trust me, man, criminals are all shapes and colors, man. Like everybody doing bad stuff out there, right? So I don't have any issue describing people based on their race. I mean, that's a very effective way to describe someone. The bigger issue is always assuming that one race causes more problems just off the bat. Like that's not cool. That is racist.
Right. Right. And those are some of the problems we have. Tell me a little bit more about, I know in your classes that you give, that you mentioned something about citizen arrest. Educate us a little bit more on
Yeah.
what that really is all about, because I'm confused.
Yeah. So some states have a statute for citizens arrest. Other states don't. North Carolina does not have a statute for citizens arrest. South Carolina does have a statute for citizens arrest. I believe I don't teach in Georgia, but I believe they do. I could be wrong, but I think that's what they were going off of. But this is what I teach in my classes: is don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. And this is the reason why, is that when you insert yourself into a situation, especially if you didn't witness the situation, you don't know what you're doing. All you're doing is making the problem worse. Okay. Like, trust me, I'm a huge proponent of using justified self-defense when you have to, right?
Right.
But if you put yourself into a situation that you really don't know what's going on, you didn't witness a crime, and you're trying to hold somebody down or citizens arrest them,
Right.
if they didn't do it, well, you've just committed kidnapping, right? You're going to jail for kidnapping an innocent person, which is just a fancy way of saying not letting somebody go where they want to go when they have a legal right to leave, right?
Right.
Not only that, how many people are going to sit there and peacefully say, oh, okay, sure, citizens arrest me? I don't know of anybody that would probably, acquiesce to somebody else's demand for doing that. So what's going to happen? There's going to be a physical conflict, right? In the course of that physical conflict, somebody might feel the need to use deadly force in a self-defense scenario. It's just a bad idea. It is just a bad idea. Even in my classes, when I teach, if you have to draw your firearm, I would much rather the person turn around and run away and I don't have to shoot than drop to the ground, because now I have to stand there for however long it takes law enforcement, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get there, holding someone at gunpoint. Yeah. Where I have to continuously cycle. Is this person going to get up and try and do me harm? When they get up, are they going to lunge at me? Or are they going to get up and turn around and run away? You have to play that constantly while you're holding them there, right? It's a stressful situation. Don't do it. Don't do it. If the person is leaving, let them leave. If they're not harming anyone else and no one else is in danger, let them go. You are not a cop. You're not a vigilante. Let them go. More people will turn out better in that scenario.
But it seems to be a lot more of that going on these days. Is it just my illusion to think that somehow people, because there's so many more guns out there, that so many people now feel like they have this given authority of the law to try to prevent whether crime or whatever they might see as crime, or
I think law-abiding, well-trained, and mentally stable people that aren't filled with hate and rage, right, don't think that way.
Well, that's a whole lot right there, Isaac. That's a whole lot of things.
But you would be surprised, though. Honestly, most people that go through the training for CWPs and stuff, they get that. They understand that a firearm is a last resort tool. They don't, right? Most people that pull a firearm immediately for the smallest infraction have never even received any type of training. They probably have some sort of rage control issues. Maybe their ego is a little too big, right? And they think somebody is challenging them. That's generally where most of the problems or shootings come from. I mean, for instance, most shootings, particularly in the Charlotte area, right? In the urban area and stuff, it's young males that feel slighted in some way, right? They get disrespected. They come back, and what do? They just start shooting, right? That's what most of the urban type of shootings are and stuff. So I would say that most individuals that have a CWP fall on the more responsible side of it. I think what happened in this case is that you had an ex-law enforcement officer that probably never lost that sense of being a law enforcement officer.
Right.
So he thought he could still kind of do the things that a law enforcement officer should be able to do when in fact he's just a private citizen.
Right. So you have people who like basically resigned or accused themselves, recused, or whatever you call the word, of themselves from the case because they are already trying to say that they looked at this tape just as you did and said that they can see how this could be self-defense on behalf of the two attackers, in my opinion, attackers.
No.
I mean, this is where the law gets really crazy, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of misconceptions about the whole stand your ground and all that stuff. And I can get into those if you like. But I think so the reason that the two DAs recused themselves originally is because the father worked as an investigator in the DA's office. So she knew him personally. So it went to the second DA, and the second DA found out that his son also worked with the other gentleman's son in the DA's office at one point in time. So what you have is you have all these recusals, not so much because of the video, but because of what could be perceived as a conflict of interest, right?
But one came back. One came back and said that he could see how it could be like self-defense, and he didn't feel like they necessarily had done anything wrong. One said that, one of them.
Yeah, and I don't know who had access to the video or when it was released or anything. Right. I don't know if the last one took that approach after seeing the video. Yeah. But I know that based on my training and the laws that I know that I teach from a self-defense perspective in those CWP classes, I find it very hard to say that you can try and block the free movement of an individual when you did not witness them do a crime and approach them with firearms, not kind of in the stowed or, position. Again, these are long guns, but there's certain ways that you can carry guns that indicate threatening or not threatening, right? If I have a gun holstered on my hip, that's not threatening. And if I take it out, it becomes threatening, right? So to me, it's very hard at all to justify how the father and son thought this would be self-defense when they put themselves into that situation, and the situation didn't even entail any type of grave bodily injury or threat of death.
Right. And like I said, that big old guy could have jumped off that truck and jumped into the fight if he wanted to physically, just not without. Instead, he just stood up there and shot. Like it was something.
And that's one of the problems is that, and I think it kind of goes back to certain individuals that have firearms that aren't trained and aren't responsible, right? When you have a firearm, your first instinct is to use it. And that's why when you go into a situation and the firearm is already out,
right,
that's kind of natural to default to that, right? Right. I mean, imagine if they were just in the truck, they being the firearms, right? Okay. They try to talk to him. Mr. Arbury, defends himself. Him and the son are fighting. Yeah, the father could have jumped down too. Then it would have been 2-on-1 type of thing, But to already start with a firearm, that's where I get, it's not okay to go into a situation already having that out.
Yeah, and that's like I said. I mean, I find myself. I did this kind of raw, as I said earlier. That I was just bothered by it yesterday a lot, and I went to sleep and I woke up and just kind of said I want to do this. So I might be a little raw right now. I found myself getting a little emotional when I think about it. I
mean, it is a sad video to watch. Yeah. It's horrific, and when you see it, people are rightfully are right to be angry and demand that these two individuals be arrested based on all the things that I've been trained and that I know of. I don't see how they weren't.
And
And he,
I want to ask you about that, Isaac. I mean,
mm-hmm,
this happened in February. It wasn't yesterday,
mm-hmm,
right? It's in February. The idea that this tape is just coming out, right? The idea that this is all just now seemed like it happened just this week.
mm-hmm.
How should we think about our government, our law enforcement, or whatever when stuff like this has happened? And if the guy wouldn't have videoed it, it probably would just go under the table.
I think you're right. Unfortunately, I think you're right. I think that the individual that released the video, I think he was an attorney for the mother at one point. I'm going off just memory and kind of what I read, so I don't know if any of this is true or not. But he just kind of released it out to the public. And like I said, I don't know if the DA, that third one, had this video already and stuff, but releasing it to the public, I think, is what is going to ultimately get some justice.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly hope so. A young man the other day, who I personally do not know, I think his name was Mr. Reeves Knight or Knight Reeves. I need to look
Mm-hmm.
up his name, but he wrote this really interesting piece on Facebook the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and I reached out to him. I didn't hear back about. He talked about who he was. He was a person who was a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
He is a gun owner. He hunts. He talks about he's a staunch
Mm-hmm.
Republican, right? And all of those things.
Yeah, he checks all the boxes.
He checked all the boxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
For I don't know how you would describe that in particularly, but you actually said that you have a lot in common with this young man.
Yeah, I mean, I would check all the boxes that, with the exception of I'm a libertarian as opposed to a Republican, but
Right.
just because I think, I like freedom and not big government, but
Yeah, I get
but
it.
yeah, I mean, I'm your stereotypical Southern white male, probably, type of thing.
Right.
And but I think what we're seeing is the outrage is across the board with this one, because it appears so egregious
Blatant.
based on that video.
Mm-hmm. What do
It's
you
one of
think?
those ones to where if you're not agreeing with the 90% of folks, you might want to kind of just revisit your internal thinking processes.
Well, I think we're going to come to that and everything.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? And as we kind of close out here, I just wanted to definitely talk about this. But what do you think is going to take for us to respect each other, love each other beyond our race and religious ideas and sexual orientation and things like that? What do you think it's going to take for these kind of things to stop happening, whether it is white against black against white against whatever it is, hate in general?
I think you have to come at it from the standpoint of understanding where kind of everybody comes from and respecting their viewpoints and not demonizing them for those. Right. For instance, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, think with Trayvon Martin. All right. Remember that one? Right. Half the country, mostly.
That was with the Skittles, right? In Florida.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, and it was Andrew Zimmerman, I believe. Right. Half the country, primarily African American, thought he was innocent. A big chunk of the people that thought he was guilty or Zimmerman was guilty, I should say, of murder were white, right? And you get this hostility back between people that don't agree with you. I can legitimately see both sides of that story in that case. I can understand why the African American community was upset with that. I absolutely can.
Right.
I can also see the other side of it. And I think until you start looking at the world kind of through the eyes of how other people perceive it and understanding that it's okay to disagree without having that hate. And that's one of my big things is, especially now with all this political, like anti-Trump stuff and
Yeah.
anti-Democrat and stuff, is that, man, if you don't agree with somebody,
Mm.
they think that everybody, and this is both sides, they think that you hate them. And a lot of times you do.
Right.
And we have to get past that. Just because you disagree with someone, there's no reason to have that level of discourse. And honestly, as good as social media is, I think social media has made things infinitely worse.
Absolutely.
I think when people get off of social media and they get off the 24/7 cable news cycles and stuff, and they, like, I wish we could go back to the 6 o'clock and the 6:30 news, and that was your news. And then that was all you got. You just got a few facts on the day, and that was it. And then you went out and you talked to your neighbors, and that was it.
Yeah, but that's certainly not the case. And you're right. Social media is just, it can be the greatest thing on the side of good and the greatest thing on the side of evil and all. And I think it's being used in both cases, unfortunately.
It's used in both cases and stuff, and it's manipulated, and whoever's using it, they change things to always be kind of in their favor and stuff. And it's one of those things. It's one of those things where you almost need a giant uniting factor that will kind of unite everybody again. Like as horrible as 9/11 was and tragic, I remember for like a year after that, like the country was united.
Right.
It was a tragic event, but we were there. And, you look at all the World War II, country was united and stuff. And now, now with this whole COVID-19 thing, you think we'd be getting united, but there's,
doesn't feel like a lot of unity going on right now. People are saying that we're in it together, but it's more like everybody's in it for themselves, trying to survive. Right. And, obviously politics are playing a heavy role in this, where you live, whether you have money, you don't have money, underlying medical conditions, who is affecting more than others. There's a lot that's going on that has separated us during a time when we should probably be, together and working together. Some of us are, but some of us are not, but what I want to do is I want to thank you for, taking a minute on the spur of the moment when I called you this morning and say, hey, man, I want to talk about this a little bit. I just want to get it off. I feel like my show is diverse. As I said, I can talk about anything, right? And I'm glad I have friends like you who I can get these real perspective. We don't always agree on everything, but it's good to be able to pick up the phone and call you, and you're willing to take a minute to come on. I want you to take a moment though and let people know about your, business and your company that you run.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. So we do weapons training, primarily firearms training. So we do concealed carry courses for both South Carolina and North Carolina. We also do training and combatives, as well as kind of the next level defensive pistol shooting classes, etc. And do a lot of seminars to businesses on employee protection and just how to keep everybody safe and things. So, go check out our Facebook or website, and we're always here to help you. Appreciate it.
Right. Well, yeah, you're absolutely, man. Yeah, I think you have a great business. And like I said, my friend will be in touch with you soon.
Right.
From the last show, I talked to him already, but he's just kind of waiting for the COVID thing to kind of pass over just a little bit. But he might be in touch with you. All right, sir?
That sounds good. He is elderly, so.
No. He's definitely elderly. That's what I heard. He has a lot of issues. Isaac, thanks so much for coming on today, buddy.
No problem. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, John.
All right, have a good one. Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we were speaking there with Mr. Isaac Richard. Wanted to just get his perspective about the guns and about how people use these things. And obviously, we know there's hate and bigotry and racism and all those things that exist, which, in my personal opinion, I think that's another reason why people should take a look at who's getting these weapons and how they're being used. But I want to send out my sincere condolences to the Arbury family, and really, really sorry that that's happened. I hope that as a country, though, that we can begin to heal and that we can begin to respect each other, as human beings, and get along and make this place a better place. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you today on that particular show. We'll be coming up here momentarily with our next show, talking about Mike Tyson and his return, possible return to the ring. Have some special guests that also be on the show for that. Thanks so much for watching Johnny Davis Live, where we have real talk and real solutions. Everyone, respect each other and always forward march. This is Johnny Davis Live, and I'm checking out. Talk to you soon.